Welcome to Bring Out Your Badass Self, a movement to break your negative thoughts and habits and instead focus on building each other up and encouraging fearless authenticity.
Each week, we will get vulnerable and share experiences alongside our guests and audience. Come rediscover your inner badass self.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning. I've got a good feeling.
What is it?
I'm just, the show today, I have a good feeling. It's going to be amazing with Chris today. And I saw a lot of people signing up. So I'm super excited about all of that. So I just had to sing this morning.
I love it. Thank you.
Oh. So how are you doing this morning?
I'm great. I am excited for my weekend. Yeah, I did something I haven't done, I think, since last year, is I really kind of did a lot of shit yesterday so that today feels a little bit less of a, end of week pile on my shoulders,
Okay. All right.
So
you got some shit done.
Yeah, I got some shit done and I'm feeling like a little lighter this Friday. So
good.
That's nice. It takes me a while to adjust after the holidays. It really does.
Oh.
So how about you?
Is it just decompressing from, I don't know, all of the stress of the holidays, or what is it?
I think so. And like just getting into a good schedule again. Here it's so cold, so dark. And the way the weather was this year, it was pretty warm up until Christmas, and then it was like, it didn't really start to get really snowy until right after Christmas. So it's just been kind of a weird winter season, I think,
I gotcha. Yeah, it's been weird for a lot of people. Like, there's been snow areas that they're like, wait a minute, I'm not supposed to have snow. Like, why are you here?
Yes, exactly.
Oh, well, as you guys are joining, please say hello to us and let us know that you have joined us. Also, I wanted to let those that are on LinkedIn, we have noticed some potential issues in the past. Not sure if it's still happening, but if you're on your phone, we have noticed that sometimes you can't comment, or sometimes you comment and we don't actually see it on StreamYard. So we are not ignoring you. So please know that. And so if for whatever reason you notice we don't bring up your hello at the very beginning, then jump over to Facebook or YouTube or go to your desktop. That's what we found is the cure to LinkedIn, is just getting on your desktop. So
yeah, it's weird, right?
Mm-hmm.
It looks like Kim is here. Good morning, Kim.
Yes. Good morning, Kim. She always says, good morning, beautiful, badass ladies. So good morning to you as well. And I can't see your name, but because of the location, I have a feeling that this is Paul in West Fargo, North Dakota. So Paul Pierce, I think from the Great Demo.
Oh, yeah. Good morning, Paul.
Yeah. And so Joel also said, good morning. Happy Friday. And so keep those coming and let us know that you have arrived. And so, Kate, I think I'm going to jump in because I'm really excited about today's topic. And so today we have Chris Schindler. She is a seasoned strategist, artist, and author of the book Unfinished, Unlock Your Superpowers, Live with Purpose, and Discover Limitless Possibilities. And she is a champion of bringing out the best in others. And so let's go ahead and bring her to the stage. Good morning. Welcome, Chris.
Hello. I'm so happy to be a badass today. This is great. This is going to be fun.
Yes.
Good morning.
Yes. Thank you.
I do have a lot of other people that have said hello, so I am going to take a quick moment just to say hello to them. And I think some of them might. And so I just noticed something. Happy day number 072 of January. And
No
thanks for
shit.
clarification on phone issues. Thought I was losing my mind. And so I'm glad we were able to help you. So the person actually from West Fargo is maybe someone that knows you. So it's Cheryl Miller. So welcome. And then we have another person from Wisconsin. So we can't see her name. You do have to go to, I think it's streamyard.com/LinkedIn or Facebook, or there's certain requirements that require us to be able to see your name. You have to give it permission. So
Yeah.
And then Bruce has joined us. He said, "Hey, badasses, it looks like my LinkedIn glitch has been cleared. So now you are going to have with my mischievous
Insolence.
yes.
Insolence.
I'm not sure. So Bruce, I skipped that word because I don't know what the hell that word is.
I think he means insolence, like in Princess Bride.
Oh, I don't know. And so it's probably a word, and I just don't know it. Tom said TGIF from my LinkedIn phone app. Great.
Great.
Working.
Thanks,
That's
Tom.
awesome. And Jean said, "Good morning from Kansas City." And we got a special guest. Deborah, hey sis. And so, awesome. So thank you guys for joining us today. And so, Chris, let's first start off. Give us a little bit of an introduction. So before we dive into your life, tell us a little bit about who Chris is today.
Who Chris is today. I know you kind of started that in your introduction, but I think as a person, I strive to be this person who helps others be their best selves or helps enable that, because they have to take action on that. But I think that's been important to me when I think back about all my roles. I've lived my career has been in the HR, under the HR umbrella, in the people space, helping development and leadership development and performance management, stuff. But it's always about helping bring out the best in people. So no matter what my title or my role or the company is, I think that's always the case, helping people bring out their best selves and do their best, because that's how everybody wants to live their lives. So in the last several years, I just had realized that has really just been a part of who I have been in my life. And it took me a really long time to figure out that that's what I've been doing all this time. Yeah.
To put some words around it and embrace it.
Yeah. Like the consistency, and you learn a lot about yourself when you leave companies. And I've been in that situation quite a bit. And people are like, "Oh, you've been so refreshing here." And I was like, "Oh, that's really cool." So bringing that, really making it about people and not the company, right, in the work that I do. So so that's a little bit about me. But right now I'm a consultant doing that for multiple companies, from an external part of their extension of their teams, right? Like helping them do this for their own employees. So that's what I do. But besides that, I consider myself an author, even though I've only written one book so far. I've got my next one in the back of my head.
Yeah. More books than I've written.
Yeah. That's funny. An artist, because I started out my life as an artist and doing art and showing my art and working part-time. Like that was where I started in my life. So once an artist, always an artist. And and I'm also consider myself like I have interests. Like I'm learning to play the guitar right now. So I have other interests I want to do. There's so many things to do in my life and so little time.
Right.
I love that. And so you said, ultimately you're the champion of bringing out the best in others. Maybe, as time goes on, it's adding in the word badass, bring out the best badass.
I like that. I'm going to help people be their own badass selves.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
That's right.
Bring out the best badass you've got.
Well, I
Yeah.
do have a question that I want to start off with, which is a little bit different than we normally start off with. And I also want to ask the audience this question as well. So the question is, we're going to be talking about a fulfilled life today. And so before we dive in, the question I have for people is, does fulfillment change over time? Meaning, is it a one and done thing? So I am curious what our audience has to think and what it is they think about that question. But Chris, if you could tackle that question before we really dive into things.
Yeah, so that is a really interesting question because I think fulfillment it's not one and done because we as we in life, continue on our journey, I think we realize what being fulfilled is changes. So earlier, in my life and my career, I was like, oh, I want to get that promotion and I want to make this much money and I want to live in this house. And I think a lot of us identify ourselves with those external things. And we think that, oh, we made it. That's like fulfillment. And then the older I've gotten, I've realized that is not that was like a facade in my past. And so I've only really in my last handful of years started realizing what fulfillment means to me. And so when I think about discovering what's really important to me, and then I'm aligning my life activities with that, that is fulfillment to me. Like I'm the happiest I've ever been in my life. And because of this work that I've done on myself and realizing what's really important. And then, yeah, it's not all of those external things. So I think your idea of what fulfillment means changes as you get more seasoned and you have more experiences in your life. So yeah, so I don't think fulfillment, not one and done. It's gonna change. And there could be little moments of fulfillment, right? Like every day there could be little tiny moments of fulfillment that aren't about anything like big.
Yeah. I think this comment that just came in is really interesting because it says, and we don't know who you are, but thank you for contributing. It says, you can be happy and satisfied in the moment. There is no end to fulfillment, and it doesn't mean that you can't be happy and satisfied too. And how I'm kind of reading that is that you can be on your path towards something that you believe will fulfill you. And that doesn't mean like you're a miserable, person on the way. You're still like able to achieve happiness and satisfaction and feel really great, toward that end goal, and with the full knowledge that, once you get there, it might start changing as you grow. So, yeah.
And I think let's go back to Bruce real quick. So he's helping to educate us. So it's an actual word, acting with light heart. Wait, what does that say? Lightened heart?
Lighthearted
fearlessness.
And indifference. Okay. So I have to go back up to mischievous. I don't know how to pronounce the word, but basically.
I think is it insolence? I don't know. I'll look it up later. Do the pronunciation.
I love Bruce for this. He puts words and I'm just like, Bruce, I don't know what that means.
Teaching us. Thank you for the education today. That's awesome.
Yes. Always count on.
I didn't know that word either. I'd never seen that word in my life. So that's good.
I'm always willing to admit when I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah. I thought there was a little typo, but I'm happy to know. So,
I knew it probably wasn't because he's actually
very
does that. And I'm just like, I don't know that word. I'm assuming it's not misspelled.
Yeah, because he's pretty good at it, right?
He is, yeah.
So Chris, do you why don't you kind of paint the picture for us of like what your younger self was, so we can kind of talk about, how you came to write the book and how you got to where you are now.
Younger, my younger adult self, my younger what are you thinking younger? Just whatever, younger self.
Whatever you think is relevant and would be,
Yeah.
then you're willing to share.
Yeah. I think my journey has been like in my 20s, I'm kind of go back to my 20s, right? Like I met my husband when I was 19 and we got married when we were 22. And so I've been with him forever. And which is, I can't even believe it. So and in my 20s, while I was married, I was in college and went back to grad school. And so this part of me is like, I mean, I had this one time where my husband was transferred to Chicago and I was finishing up school in Milwaukee. So he lived in Chicago, I lived in Milwaukee. And then when I graduated, I moved to Chicago, and then he was and I started a grad program in DeKalb, Illinois, if anyone's familiar with that area, it was in Northern Illinois University. He was transferred back to Milwaukee. And I was like, I mean, hell no, I'm not going to stop my MFA program because he's moved, right? So then we lived apart. Well, I finished up grad school, and I would just come home to Milwaukee on the weekends. So I had like this, I've always been very determined person, right? Like nothing's going to really get in my way of doing the things that are really important to me. So I've always had kind of that. And then as I was going through, and I was a drawing major in both undergrad and grad school. You don't see drawing majors anymore. But that was what my passion was at the time. So in my 20s, I had a studio and I did artwork and I showed my artwork. And then I worked part-time gigs on the side. And that was really important to me. And my husband was like this really supportive person where, you want to go to grad school, you want to do art. And then so I was like living this, I loved, art and doing all of this art. And it was just so much a part of me. And the art that I did was about this concept of sense of self. And it was the female nude was my subject matter. And it was all about these women who had this beautiful sense of self. And so I knew that was, important, this idea about sense of self. But what's really funny is that in my book now, I wrote about this sense of self, about this idea about what is your sense of self? How well do you know yourself? So it's really interesting to me that kind of circling back to that concept.
Wow.
Yeah, I didn't really discover that until I wrote the book. But knowing that was just something super important. But the other thing is I've always had this where I was determined and I asked for what I wanted. I also had this self-doubt that has been part of my life journey. So when I was in my late 20s, my husband was like, are you going to get a full-time job with benefits? And, and I was like, oh shit. Yeah, I probably should do that. So I put art aside for a really long time. And I still kind of have, but I had to figure out, I just had myself kind of figured out through the art that I did. And then I had to sort of shift gears in my life and see how that fit into another, this professional, environment, where I went to work in a professional environment. So I think that part of my life is so foundational to, the journey of today. And
when you think back into the 20s, as you were doing art and things like that, and you think about we go back to the word fulfillment. Did you feel like, oh, this is it? I've made what it is that I'm wanting, not knowing maybe some of the things that were coming.
That's that's a good question. Let me think about that.
Sorry, you said that I would make you think today.
Yeah, I did say that. I was like, I can tell before we hopped on here today, everyone, I was like, I can tell you're going to make me think today. No, this is great. I love your questions. I felt partially fulfilled. My sister, I felt fulfilled in the art. My sister's on here today. Hi, Deb. Thank you for being here. But I know, like, in my 20s and when I was younger, I followed in my sister's footsteps a lot. And so I think art is, and that's a great compliment to her, because I just was like, I wanted to. And then there's some part in my life where I was like, I need to figure out to do my own thing, right? So I did a lot of stuff and followed in my sister's footsteps, and a lot of meaningful, engaging stuff. I've met good friends, and I don't regret. All of that was really good stuff. Like a lot of the activism I've done, because she's like this superstar, like she's gonna go change the world, and I love it. And my art was like my thing. It was like, so it was fulfilling. And one of the most fulfilling parts of my art was I had this professor, and he was on my, you have your little committee in grad school. And he was really scary and really gruff looking. And he had a PhD in painting. Okay. You're never going to see that ever again. No one's ever going to have a PhD in painting, but he knew he would come into my studio at school, and he would always try to ask me these questions about my art. And then one day he said something, and I explained what it was, and he's like, "That's it. That's what I've been trying to get you to. Like, you figured something. You figured out what the meaning is in your art." Because a lot of times you do that, and you have to go deep, because your art that's part of your core, right? Like what you do. So that was a fulfilling moment. Like right there, we talk about, in my book, I talk about small but mighty, like recognizing those small but mighty little moments, right? Like that was a fulfilling moment. So I had bits and pieces of fulfilling moments, but art was fulfilling. It was a fulfilling thing for me, because it was part of who I was, and it was my thing, and nobody else's. And so then when I had to sort of shift gears around that, that was hard. I felt like I lost a part of myself.
It is really interesting how in your 20s you were in that space, that really artistic space, but you were thinking and drawing and creating around this concept of sense of self. And although art comes from a really deep place, on paper, it's a really kind of two-dimensional thing, right? It's very surface, or it's, the outside. And then as you aged, you had to go deeper, but still around the sense of self, that has been kind of a theme for you.
Yeah, it's been a theme, and I've struggled. I think about this, right? Probably that was so important to me because I was trying to figure out myself, right? And so that was an important topic for me, because I struggled with that sense of self, right? I want to figure myself out, right? And I want to do meaningful work, and I don't want to just, I don't want to just go punch a time clock. Oh, I'm just putting my time and leave. And, that's not how I wanted to spend my life. So I had to figure out, when I started interviewing, in the professional world, and I had to figure, because every single person, well, how do you go from art to HR? And I had to have an answer for that.
Right.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
So I'm going to pull up this comment. So can't see you. If you can go to StreamYard.com/Facebook, we then can see your name. But Facebook user says fulfillment seems to change with responsibilities. What do you think about that?
Are you asking me? Fulfillment? Yeah, fulfillment's change. I think that, I love that your guests are making me think too. Thank you for making me think. Fulfillment seems to change with responsibilities. I think that's probably the case, right? Like, depending on what you're doing or responsible for, you could feel less or more fulfilled, right? And we were talking right before we hopped on here. If you're not using like your talents and your things that you're naturally good at, you probably might feel in the tasks and in your responsibilities. Like, if you can't tap into you probably aren't going to feel as fulfilled, right? Because it's not your space. It's not like where you feel like you can contribute. If you're not using your natural talents and what's, part of your core, you can't deliver your best. And so it's hard to feel fulfilled when you can't bring your whole self, I think.
Yeah. Give people a little bit of background of what it is we were talking about and what it is that you do with the company that you're at, that people can use to help them with that.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you for that prompt. There's a assessment called Strengths Finders. And I'm a strengths finder certified coach. And it's a Gallup assessment, but the whole idea, and I fell in love with this. I got certified about 8 years ago or something. And I fell in love with strengths because what they do is it takes you probably a good 20, 30 minutes, probably 20 minutes to take this assessment. And it will tell you what your top 5 strengths are. There's 34 strengths. And actually, this is based off of like 300 to 400. They did all this research and they put them into these 34 categories. And it'll tell you your top 5 based on how you answer these questions. And yes, Kate's got the book up there. There's a Strengths Finders book out there. But anyway, you get your top 5 and you're like, oh, you start seeing, oh my gosh, these are the things that show up, how I show up most frequently in my life with these talents. And they're not really strengths until you're aware of them and you're leveraging them with intention and you're intentional with them, right? So that's what I was referring to a little bit earlier. And one of the reasons I love Strengths Finders is because they have been doing this for years and they have all this research, and you get your top 5 in a certain order. And that order is, how frequently you show up with that, right? Every day. And Strengths Finders, based on all of their data and like 30 million people who have taken this assessment, their data shows that 1 in 34 million people have the same order of those top 5. 1 in 34 million.
Wow.
So yeah. So to me, that's like mind-boggling. And it just tells me how unique we all are, right? We're all unique. We're not supposed to fit in because, right? Like, we spend our lives trying to fit into places, and we're not like anybody else except that 1 in 34 million people, right? So even if you have similar top 5s, they come in a different order. They show up differently for you, right? So anyway, that is why I love this Strengths Finders. Anybody can go take it. You can go to look up Gallup and go to their store, and it's like $20 or something like that, maybe $25. Anybody can take that assessment and kind of learn about yourself. And it helps put some language to, understanding yourself. But hopefully that helps explain, what
it does. And I think, to go back to what they said, so fulfillment seems to change with responsibilities. I think that if your responsibilities are not in alignment with your talents, you might not be fulfilled.
Correct.
Yeah, yep. Yeah, that's right.
That was what I was starting to kind of explain. So thank you for circling back. You're a very good facilitator. Thank you. Circling back to my main point of, like, if you're not using what you're good at, people might say, and I listen, and I went through this certification, and the Gallup person, was training, and somebody said, well, aren't some people just lazy and they don't want to work? And right, because we make these judgments about people. They're right. So, And this guy, like, so pure in his thinking, he was like, no, they're not lazy. They're just not doing what they're good at. Like, right. And I was like, whoa, that's so awesome to think about. So going back to the comment about changing with responsibilities, like, if you're responsible for things that you're not, they're just
Right.
not like part of you, like, how are you going to be fulfilled? So
Right.
thank you for your comment. That's really great.
I really love that, because when you really think about it, I mean, I think about like our kids, for example, they're going to school, and sometimes they're like, why do I have to do this? And they're struggling because they aren't feeling fulfillment in what it is that they're doing. And so I think as educators, this is one of the things that I think that we're finding also in the corporate industry, but we haven't applied this necessarily to also other areas of, well, what triggers this person? What makes this person come out? And so even these types of things, I think, could really be done even for kids in understanding how we can better educate them as well.
Yeah,
Right.
like just appreciating people and their uniqueness. And, you know, we can't treat everybody the same. And so I think that's kind of a, you know, working in the business world and working with organizations for as long as I have, right? Like there's this, how do we now understand, you know, there's this term out there that's like moments that matter, right? Like there are moments that matter, but there's thousands of them. We try to pull them into like a handful of moments that matter. But we don't know what matters to people unless we get to know people a little bit more and understand what's important to them. So I feel like there's more of a trend in, you know, trying to practice that and building relationships with people in organizations. But, you know, that's hard because we're trying to get results, and, you know, that takes time to do. So how do we help people be their best selves? We get to know who they are and what's important to them.
I think there's a huge component of that, like getting to know people and allowing them to work and live inside their strengths, right? Being really aligned with that. That happens best when there's acceptance, right? So like, I accept that you are different than me, right? I accept that your perception is different than mine. I accept that, like, we could experience the same exact fucking thing and you could have a completely different memory of it, right? Like I was there and my memory is this and your memory can be one thing. And I think that concept of acceptance is huge when we're talking about, you know, not only do you need to know yourself and accept yourself, but you also, you know, in order to really lift other people up, you have to accept all of these differences, right?
Yeah, you're right. And what I really like that you said was know yourself and accept yourself, right? Because it's easier for other people to do that when you do that for, you know, accept you when you accept yourself. Right. So I love that. I love that you said that. And I think that's a lot about like how to help people bring out their best is to help them know who they are, you know, help them, you know, apply tactics that can help minimize those obstacles, you know, self barriers, the barriers and obstacles that we create for ourselves. You know, how do we minimize some of those things? Like, I mean, just things like, and I was talking a little bit, you know, before we hopped on here about this word should, if we could just remove or minimize that word should from our you know, in our vocabulary, and put more words like that word that you're lighthearted, like whatever the word I couldn't say and I never heard.
Bruce, yeah.
Right. Yeah. Bruce added in there, right? Like, but should is just disappointment. I should have done that. I should do that, because we're just focusing on something we didn't do, and you can't feel good about that, right? Like even something as little as that, right? Like how do we show up every day and remove those obstacles, or I like to call them like those orange construction barrels, in our journey in life, right? Like, so that we can accept ourselves and get to know ourselves.
We had a guest, I don't know, a few months ago. Her name was Rochelle Moulton, and one of the things that she said, it was a kind of a play on the sounds of the word, right? But she said, "Well, I try not to should on myself." So
Yep.
so she tries not to should on people or on herself, and I think that's so clever. But it really rings true, because should, like, there's a reason why it starts with SH, right? It's like a shameful thing, like when you say should, you're like almost shaming yourself a little bit.
Kinda.
Don't should yourself. It's
Exactly.
That's clever. Try not to should on myself. That's a good takeaway, everybody. Try not to should on yourself.
I love that. And so you're talking a little bit about the discovery of yourself. And so I want to dive into you. So how is it that you focused on trusting yourself? And what are the things that you worked on to be able to trust yourself?
There you go. Making me think again. Which is great, actually. How did I start? How did I start trusting in myself? That's a journey, right? Like, it's not like all of a sudden one day I flipped the switch and I was there, right? Like, it was, I think, and I think that I'm really practicing that now too, because, like, when I'm in a situation in my day and I know the solution, right? And I have to, like, trust what I know, right? Like, that's a test for me every day. So how did I get to this point, basically, is knowing the self-discovery. I think writing the book helped me so much. Like, that was like that was an experiment in itself, and just like becoming aware of myself. But I think, like, I've had a lot of I'm not very linear in my how I tell a story, so bear with me for a second. But it may, like, I start going one path and then I think of something else. And so if I back up, like, maybe 6 years, and I've been in situations in organizations where my position's been eliminated. Like, I've been in the job market a lot. And that really has taken a toll on trusting myself in my career. And so, and it's made me stronger, and it's made me have to think about how I believe in myself, because it's not always about me. When you lose your job and your company says, we're eliminating your position, in my mind, that might mean that, they're not fighting for me to stay. They don't believe in me. They, what did I do wrong? Right. And so, not to say that I didn't have some contribution to the matter, but it's not always about me, right? It may not be a good fit. I can think about every time that's happened, it's been for the best, right? Because I wasn't enjoying work anymore. And I think, like, the universe kind of kicked me in the butt and said, okay, you're not leaving on your own. I think we're going to help you with that. Right. So, so those experiences over time, I'm circling back now. Those experiences over time, like, have made me think about, it's not about me, and I have to believe in myself. It's, it's not a good fit. I'm not going to be fulfilled or happy here, and I haven't been. So I have to believe that what I bring to this world is good. Like, I've met people in the job market who are like, I feel like I have to change my story every time I interview for another job. And I'm like, no, like, your story's good, right? Like, you don't have to do that. Like, bring yourself. So I think those life experiences that I've had have really tested me and my self-confidence and how I think about myself, right? And so it's a big deal when people lose their job. That's hard. That is hard emotionally. So I think that's played a lot in it. And then I joined this women's leadership group, and there were other women like me. Some of them were divorced, someone lost their job, someone had lost a human in their life. They all had their own experiences. Someone was trying to find love. Anyway, we did together like this little community. We accepted each other. We helped each other. We did vision boards together. It was like, you're not alone in this, right? So it's just, I think, experiences. But taking me to today again, I've been through a lot of experiences, and I've had to find a way to just believe that things are going to work out. The universe has my back, and things will be okay. And what I bring to the world is a gift and needs to be somewhere, right? So I don't know if that answers the question very concisely, but
I think you touched upon it a little bit, but it's also your intuition of really trusting. Sometimes as you said, the universe will push you when you aren't really listening to it. Like those, I call them the whispers as well. So understanding your gut, understanding the things that your body, as your sister would say, your unconscious is trying to tell you.
Yeah.
And so those things that sometimes you're not necessarily listening to.
Yeah, correct. And I interviewed for a job once, and there was a flag in the interview. I took the job because I was in a scarcity mindset, and I was like, oh, there's not going to be another job, and whatever the case is. So I took the job, and a year later that I was out of that job. Right. So trusting, like, these things, and we choose not to listen to them. Right. So when I'm at work and I'm like, no, I know this, like, how do I bring that to life? Right. And trust myself. Right. And trust, and things. So it's a good question. Like, there's not a clean answer around that. Right. But
there isn't.
And there's all these components, right? There is like this intuition. There's this knowing that you sometimes have. Then there's times where you can see especially if you're like an open-minded person or a person that really likes to analyze stuff, you can see all the benefits to it. You can see, like, okay, if I make this decision, this good thing could happen, or I did this, And so I found that it's helpful to when you're kind of tackling that to look at it from not just, the intuition, but to realize there are times when, you may need to make a decision because it aligns with your values, and maybe it's not the most comfortable thing, but you still have to do it because of something else. Right. And so there's all these little tools you can use to get you there.
Cate, that's a good point, right? Because knowing yourself and what's important to you is your guide. Right. And so trusting that's your guide in life, I think. And that's what I figured out. So because I just, my last few corporate jobs, I just, after 25 years in corporate America, I just got depleted and didn't feel like I could add value in a way that a company can receive what I know. Right. So, and that's okay. They have their priorities and things like that. But then I realized that wasn't the place. And then I found this place where I am now, which is like, whoa, I don't hate going to work every day. And I like it. And they appreciate the talents, right? So what, and their goal is, their strategy or goal is to activate strategy through bringing out the best in people, right? Like, how much more could that be aligned, right, to what my interests are? So then when you position yourself in a way where you are where you should be, you start trusting in yourself more as well. So it's a really good question. And I do see this comment from James around loving the word unleash, because it makes you have it. Yes, you've got it. Just need to stop being held back. Like, I think holding yourself back, that's it. You nailed it, right? Like, exactly. So we all have this stuff to bring to the world, and our job is to find a way, and our, meaning the collective our,
right?
Me, right? And finding a way to help people bring that to life.
Yeah. And if we go back to even the title of this particular episode, it is Unearth and Unleash the Full Potential. So when we think about the word unearth, that talks about the discovery aspect. So what are the, all of the different tools, or sometimes it's the universe pushing us, or, it's us doing these different things to unearth our true potential. But then once we sort of figure that out, it's also finding the right people, the right individuals, whether it's company or friends or partners, whatever, to really be able to then unleash.
Yeah, you're right. And this takes me back to a story in my 20s, because when I was, when I was like, okay, I got to go get a full-time job. I don't know how to do that. I don't know what I'm good at. Like, I've worked all these part-time jobs and I'm an artist. Like, what could I offer a company? And anyway, my sister was like, what do you mean? You're so versatile. You've done all these things. Like, companies like that you can. Companies value that versatility, right? And I was like, oh, like in that moment, I could have chosen to be like, no, I don't believe you. Or I could have been like, whoa, that was a pivotal moment in my life, with my sister telling me that, where I didn't believe in myself and she believed in me and something about me, and I chose to believe it. So think about how many things people say to us that we don't choose to believe, and we brush off a compliment or something like that, right? And today, I still value about myself that I can jump into any project and add value in any way, because I think that was the root of that, right? Like we have to believe, and I write about this in the book too, like, you believe what people tell you, right? And take with a grain of salt the things that, the bad things they tell you, right, is a lot of times about them. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't be self-reflect and things like that, right? But we often brush off. And in my career, in developing others, when you're in a room and you say, okay, talk about, your strengths, and people are like, they can't they can't come up with something, right? And they're so focused on the negative things about themselves. So you have to believe you have to know your talents and do the work to understand them, believe in them, and also believe the good things that people tell you, right? It's
that mind shift is really important. And so she helped you to sort of shift how you thought about yourself and really help draw out those strengths. And as we were talking about earlier, you had an individual that you worked with, and you have a particular strength, they have a particular strength. Maybe talk a little bit about that. And I think that also gives people more perspective of appreciating each other.
Yeah, I think so. And Cate, this makes me think of your acceptance, right? I had a colleague in my past, and my top strength is activator, which means if we're not moving fast enough, we're talking too much in a meeting, I can actually feel it in my body. My body starts to get uncomfortable if we're not taking some action. And this woman, her top is deliberative, which means she's very intentional and think around everything, which is a great skill. So, and not only that, but the last few of the 34, mine is deliberative and hers is activator. So think about
opposite,
right? We're totally opposite. But once we knew that, and this is the point about getting to know others, right? Because once we understood that, we were like, oh my gosh, she can help me think through things, and I can help her take action when she's getting to, analysis paralysis. So just learning that about each other and about yourself, right? Helped you understand the other person where it might have felt like conflict, initially. And then you start telling your stories that people don't like you and they don't like your ideas, right? But then you start to understand, when you know people, oh, well, this is about them or me, right? And how we operate and what our talents are. And they might, and we can leverage each other instead of butting heads with each other. So, yeah.
I love that. And because I tend to look for people that are not like me in a lot of ways. Like we have some similarities, but like Cate is, as you can see, I like asking very inquisitive questions, but Cate is so insightful with a lot of her observations and things like that. She's also very empathetic. And so for me, she compliments me. And then we have another colleague that he is more deliberate. I'm probably more of an activator. Like I'm like, let's go, let's go. You know, I can immediately find an answer or help people to figure out a solution. He has to take some time. And he says, I need some time to ponder that. And I'm like, okay. And then whenever he does that, like he comes back with like all of these details and you're like, wow.
Yeah. Ponder you did.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And so with that, if we really, I think part of fulfillment is also finding people that complement you as well.
Oh, compliment you like, yes, they have something that you don't bring.
Yeah.
And can help you be your best, because we can't be good at everything, right? So we can yes, I love that. Absolutely. We can't do anything on our own. Like we need people, right? Like we need community, we need people. I love that.
I love that. So, Chris, let's talk a little bit about one of the other things that we do is, I guess, maybe before we go into the final gift and talent, maybe we ask, and Cate, maybe you ask your question, your typical question of the 20-year-old self.
Oh, yeah. So if you could, I mean, I feel like you had some of these moments. Like I think it was Deborah that was the one that says that you were so versatile. Because I couldn't remember if you had more than one sister.
I do actually, but Deborah was the one I was talking about.
Yeah. Oh, and as like a little side point, you know, that made such perfect sense to me when I think about like how the universe works, right? So like you were like looking up to her and like following her in her footsteps, and then she is the one that was able to give you this like pivotal moment by being like, whoa, you know. But had you not been following her, had you not been like seeing her in that path, you would not have trusted that. You would have been like, you don't, you know, like it's because you had such a great esteem for her as well, I think.
Yeah, that's a good point. I love that, Cate. Yeah. Well, and that's why, like in our path too, right? Like our path, like there's like these moments, but everything that leading up to that is like matters.
Right. Those are the means to the end.
Yeah.
So if there was another thing, or if it's something you've already mentioned, but like, what would you want to tell that 20-year-old person? You know, if you look back on yourself and you know, what would you want to tell yourself?
You know, I have a 23-year-old daughter. So this is, so it's perfect. So, you know, she's had some rough times and some great times, right? But in those rough times, you know, I mean, there's so many things I'd love to say to a 20-year-old, but, you know that you have these talents to bring to the world, right? Like 20-year-olds, I'll just go for my daughter's example. I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. Right. Like, and I'm like, you don't have to have your life all figured out.
You don't. Yeah, it's okay.
Right. Like, it's okay. So just do things where you feel energized. I mean, support yourself. Like you have to do that. Right. But if you go and work for that company and you're miserable, don't stay working there. Right. Like your happiness is your fulfillment, right? Like you're not going to feel this whole conversation, right? You're not going to feel fulfilled if you're working someplace where you feel drained and you don't want to go every day, you know. So I had a conversation with somebody just the other day who, you know, was doubting themselves. She's a young person, doubting themselves, feeling like she's doing things wrong, you know. And so I just want to tell them it's not, this is not about you. Believe in yourself, right? Like you're talented and you have this stuff to bring to the world, and you have to find the place, that will be appreciated. Right. And so life just, it's never, and, like I say, like, there's a reason they say rest in peace because while you're alive and you're on this journey, right? Like you're just going to be continuing to explore and discover and, figure things out, and don't feel like you have to fit in somewhere. Just be you. And that's how you can be the happiest. So, I mean, or feel the most fulfilled, right? And being you is going to bring you opportunity and limitless possibilities. And you just have to believe in that.
Yeah. I like the hashtag. I always use it. Be you, not them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
yeah. I like that too. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Be you, not them. Right. Because there's a reason you're here. Right. And again, 1 in 34 million people.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'd have to think about that more, but those are a couple things that come off the top of my mind. And when I talk to my daughter about where she is in her journey, like, she needs to know, right, that, life is a series of discoveries, small moments of fulfillment, right? Find your place where it aligns with the things that are important to you. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
And so I know that, so you have the book, which is unfinished. And what I would like to do is post. So after this, I'm going to post that particular book. That's sort of our gift back to our audience. But you also have something else. So not just the book, but those that then take the time to read the book, you are doing something new starting in February.
I am actually, I'm pretty excited about this. I'm starting a monthly unfinished discussion series. So it's just an opportunity for people to come and, read the book. I mean, and you don't have to read it all. It's like, we're just discussing some concepts in chapter 1 first, but it's not about me in the book. It's really about bringing out your best, or helping others be their best selves, and talking about this concept of what is unfinished and how do you live in an unfinished kind of state of mind and appreciate that. So we may have guest speakers, or we may have, I don't know, it's an experiment and it's unfinished as well, but starting that in February, on February 19th is the first one. So if anybody is interested, and you go to the website and you just sign up, subscribe to the website, you will receive information about this. You'll be part of, being informed. So through that. So, but I would love more folks if you're interested. If I get more than I can handle in one, then we'll do 2 of those sessions, but there's no cost to the session.
Yeah. And so I'll repost this, but I did post this in there for those that are live, and then we'll repost it afterwards as well. So it's ChristineSchindlerAuthor.com is the website. So they can just go to that, and then it looks like subscribe comes up. So they can subscribe to the email, the news, and the updates to be able to then join that as well.
Correct. Yep. You got it.
We have a really beautiful comment here that just came in too.
Yes.
So Chris, you are very uplifting, and I have found that all of the positive thoughts and feelings I hold about myself were aligning with you as you spoke. This has been one of my favorite shows. Absolutely beautiful. Your light is bright.
Aww.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. That makes my month. And that says a lot, because we're almost at the end of January. That's really kind. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Oh, we'll have to go back and see who that is. So thank you. That's awesome.
Yeah, I appreciate that so much.
Yeah. And so, Chris, any final thoughts as we start to wrap up today?
Whoa. I guess I would say embrace unfinished and enjoy. That's like my tagline. Embrace unfinished and enjoy. No, I just want to thank everybody for being here, and thank you for allowing me to be on this show. But I do mean it about this mindset shift about being unfinished, right? And because there's so much more, like if we have too many expectations of ourselves, of others, we're missing out on so many possibilities that we don't even know exist because we're only thinking about this one thing, right? So anyway, I think I would say that as a final word, and just thank you. And I'm grateful to be here. It was so much fun to talk to you,
I
ladies.
love that. Yeah, thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you, Deborah, for introducing us to Chris.
Yeah,
and
thanks,
so,
sis.
and thank you to our audience. Super interactive today. I love it. Keep it coming. I'm here for it.
Me
So,
too.
Kate, do you want to finish us off today?
Yeah, let this exploration of the uns today, unearthing, unleashing, unfinished, let this kind of fuel and inspire you. And, go on and have a badass, kick-ass weekend and next week, and we'll see you in a week.
Look forward to your next badass.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.